The knock came just after sunrise, sharp and impatient, the kind that makes your heart jump before your feet even touch the floor. I remember thinking it was strange because mornings in our quiet Canadian suburb were usually gentle. Snow still clung to the edges of the sidewalks, and the street outside my townhouse was silent. When I opened the door, two men stood there in dark uniforms, badges catching the pale light. One of them said my name like he already owned it. "Sir, you're under arrest." In that moment, I felt the same cold fear I'd seen on countless faces over the years, the fear that tells you your life is about to be turned upside down. I was still wearing my old flannel shirt, coffee barely touched behind me, when they stepped closer. They didn't explain much, just threw out words like complaint, disturbance, and authority. My wife appeared behind me, confusion written all over her face, and I could see my teenage son peeking from the stairs, his eyes wide. I raised my hands slowly, not because I was afraid of them, but because I knew what fear does to people when power is misused. I asked to see proper identification, real paperwork, something official. The taller one smirked and said, "You don't get to ask questions." As they tried to move me outside, my mind went somewhere else entirely. It went back to long winters spent working cases, to late nights in freezing parking lots, to the day I promised myself I'd retire quietly and never wear the badge again unless it truly mattered. I had moved into this community hoping for peace. The HOA board had never liked me much. They didn't like that I questioned sudden fines, or that I spoke up when elderly neighbors were bullied over minor rules. I'd received warning letters, passive-aggressive emails, and once even a threat that they'd handle me properly if I didn't fall in line. Still, I never imagined this. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Neighbors stood on their porches, whispering, some filming with their phones. I caught the eye of Mrs. Patel from across the street, a widow I'd helped shovel snow for years. She looked terrified, not of me, but for me. One of the men tightened his grip on my arm, and that's when I knew something was wrong. Real officers don't act like this. They don't rush without reason, and they don't enjoy it. Calmly, I asked one last time for their badge numbers and detachment. The shorter one hesitated, just for a second. That second told me everything. I took a slow breath and said words I never expected to say again. I told them my full name, my former rank, and the fact that I had served as chief of police in this region for over a decade before retirement. The street went quiet, even the wind seemed to pause. Their faces changed instantly, confidence cracked into panic. The taller man stepped back, mumbling something about a misunderstanding. I asked who sent them. They wouldn't answer, but they didn't have to. I already knew. The HOA president had been watching from her SUV down the street, arms crossed, her plan unraveling in real time. I pulled out my phone and made one call. Not to threaten, not to show off, but to do what I had always done, uphold the law. Within minutes, real police vehicles arrived, lights flashing softly against the snow. What followed wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, heavy, and deeply sad. The fake officers were detained. Statements were taken. Neighbors spoke up, one by one, sharing stories of intimidation and fear they'd lived with for years. My wife held my hand the entire time, her grip tight, her eyes shining with both relief and anger. The HOA president tried to explain herself, claiming she felt unsafe, and thought this was the only way to deal with me. Hearing that hurt more than the arrest attempt. Fear had turned into cruelty. In the weeks that followed, the HOA board was dissolved, charges were laid, and our community changed. People started talking to each other again. Kids played freely outside. Elderly residents smiled more, knowing someone had finally stood up. For me, it wasn't about being recognized as the former chief. It was about remembering why I became one in the first place. Power without accountability destroys trust, but courage, even quiet courage, can rebuild it. Sometimes I still think about that knock at the door. How easily things could have gone wrong. How many people don't have the experience or the voice to protect themselves. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's that authority means nothing without integrity, and standing up for what's right, even when you're afraid, can change more than just your own story. In the end, justice didn't come from who I was, but from choosing to remain calm, honest, and human when it mattered most.